Yes, hello to you all again out there in YouTube land, and thanks again for coming back to your favourite classic dirt bike TV channel, and I'm glad that you could join me here once more. Now we're going to just dive straight into our very next video, and in this particular clip we're going to take a look at Kenny Hope's 1990 KX250 Kawasaki Evolution bike. Now this featured machine of Kenny's is, as you can no doubt gather, not a fully original bike from that early 1990s era, but Kenny has added quite a few special parts to his Evolution racer, although essentially the bike still has the nucleus of a 1990 KX model with its frame, motor and many other period correct parts. Now it was during the first lockdown period in 2020 in the UK when the dreaded COVID took control of the country. Then Kenny took the opportunity to then completely dismantle his old Evolution racer and then give it a complete rebuild and refurbishment. And what you see here is the result of Kenny's very hard work over the course of that lockdown period. Now back in the 1990s, these 250 KXs were pretty awesome machines for their time, and as 1990 Evolution motocrossers go for that year, these KXs were certainly up there with some of the very best off-road bikes of that period. Now of course Kawasaki were still using these steel perimeter frames in that year with a twin parallel spar arrangement that ran down either side of the bike, which then of course connected onto a single down tube at the front that then split into two around the exhaust's header of the motor. But the steel chassis was certainly, as you'd expect, very rigid and of course very strong. Now of course the heart of the 1990 KX250 was this fantastic reed valve 250 two-stroke motor, which to put it lightly was certainly one of the best 250 stroker motors that you could lay your hands on in that particular year. Now some riders say that these 250 power plants will maybe not get you the whole shot prize on the day, although where this little motor worked its magic was in the mid-range, and when it got wound up and in that sweet spot, it was certainly a match for any two-stroke rival on the track. Now part of Kenny's upgrades on his Kawasaki was to have some of the motor's casings covered in this Cerakote ceramic coating, and it looks like the clutch cover, water pump and even the power valve housing have all had that particular treatment. Now these KX250s of course had Kawasaki's KIPS induction system, or Kawasaki integrated power valve system if you want to give it its full title, but this very compact little power unit could certainly pack quite a punch for only a relatively small 250cc motor. And again, to feed that reed valve cylinder, we've got a flat slide Mikuni carburetor to supply it with its fuel, and these flat slide Mikunis were certainly good carbs, and as you'd expect they were highly tunable for more power or rider preferences. But as I said, when you get these 250 motors set up just right, they can certainly fly, and we'll even get an opportunity to see Kenny and this KX250 perform on the racetrack just shortly. Now again, the original 1990 KX250s had the lowboy exhaust system fitted back in the day, although as you can see here Kenny's opted to fit one of these very high quality Fresco exhaust expansion chambers, and again these Fresco units are very well made and high quality, and of course are a simple bolt-on replacement for the Kawasaki original. Now this rear tailpipe on Kenny's machine could quite well be the stock item that was fitted to the bike in 1990, but as I said, for an early 1990s Evolution racer, these KX250 motors were a very good choice if you wanted to be competitive on the racetrack. And even today, these early 90s KXs are very much sought after by the Evolution racing fraternity. And potential buyers of one of these 1990s KX250s are quite well prepared to dig deep and pay good money for an original example of one of these iconic machines. Now again, if my aging memory serves me correctly, I think that when these Kawasaki's were first launched in the early 90s, they would have been fitted with a set of 41mm Kayaba forks, as I remember, although it's said that the American versions of these KXs came as standard with a set of 46mm conventional forks, and not these upside down variations that we see here. But nevertheless, these Kayaba suspension systems were certainly very good, and they did have a bit of scope for tuning of the rebound and damping settings. Now once again, because this was the 1990s, of course the old school drum brakes were now gone, and we now had these very modern Nissan hydraulic disc brakes with those fancy wavy discs, or rotors, as I know that you call them over there in the United States. But these hydraulic stopping systems were state of the art for their time, and they were a huge step forward in motorcycle braking systems, and that's why these brakes, and these Nissan brakes in particular, are used on all manner of motorcycles across the globe. And so as we move on to the rear of this bike, we have Kawasaki's own brand Unitrack rear suspension system with that very nicely engineered alloy box section swing arm. And it seemed that during this period of the rise of these Evolution motocrossers, that all of the major manufacturers of the time appear to have their own name and design for their bikes' rear suspension systems, because Honda had the Pro Link system, Yamaha had the monocross system, and of course Suzuki had their full floater, although essentially they were all just different titles for a product that did more or less exactly the same thing. And again, as we stay with the rear end of Kenny's machine, I'm pretty sure that back in the day these KXs would have been fitted with a Kayaba rear shock when it left Kawasaki HQ in 1990, but as of course with all of these Evolution racers, this has now been swapped for a top of the range Swedish made Öhlins rear shock, which will almost certainly be a step up from that Kayaba original. Now once more, I'm sure you're aware that these Evolution KXs naturally had a plastic fuel tank that sat inside both of those parallel frame spars of the chassis, and it was situated in such a position so as to keep the bike's centre of gravity as low as possible, just to try and help the balance of that steel chassis. And again, the tank was also fitted with these plastic air scoops just to try and help direct oncoming air into the motor's radiators to assist its cooling effect. And so as we move along to the business end of Kenny's machine, and this was fitted with a pair of modern style Pro Taper handlebars, and the other parts, including the grips and cables, were again all top quality motocross items. Now, of course, it was also fitted with a compulsory engine kill switch, just in case of any problems with that KX250 Kawasaki motor. Now, the clutch and brake levers were, I'm sure, a Pico unbreakable items, which of course were designed to just fold back if the bike was ever dropped onto its side. Although overall I have to say that these KX250s from 1990 were certainly a very good overall package if you were in the market for a 250 two-stroke race bike in that particular year, because straight from the crate these 250 Quackers had decent suspension on the front and rear and a very good strong steel chassis, and of course that fantastic buzzy 250 two-stroke motor that had a good reputation for ruggedness, reliability and power, and it appeared that riders in the 1990s bought these KXs in their thousands. And although this featured bike of Kenny's here is not a standard stock machine from that year, it's still a cracking looking example of one of these iconic green minis from that 1990s era. And I've got to say that Kenny's made a pretty good job of refurbishing and upgrading his 250 race bike. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about Kenny's machine and had a quick look at some of the fancy parts that are fitted to it. So let's just go trackside and take a look at the bike perform in the over 50s and 60s class at Pound Mill in 2021. So that brings us quite nicely along to the second race for the over 50s and 60s class. And as you can see, the weather's still absolutely perfect here at Pound Mill for this kind of racing. But as the riders leave the line, looks like a good start by number 356. That's Kenny Hope on that quite nice looking KX250 Kawasaki. So as they head towards us, it is indeed number 356 Kenny Hope, your race leader. Second looks like it's Morton Hanna. So as they make their way to come up the hill, nice gaggle off right. Oh, looks like we've got a couple of fallers into the turn there. It looks like a collision between number 603 Colin Neal and number 155, that's James Struthers. But here's your race leader, number 356 Kenny Hope, on that quite nice looking KX Kawasaki. You may remember we had a close look at this bike in the paddock in a previous video from this event, but Kenny told me he spent most of the lockdown period preparing this bike, and I must admit he's done a fantastic job in it, and as you can see, he's pretty quick with it as well. Second place man there looks like Morton Hanna. Number 21 is Mark Kenny. Of course, Mark this time is out on his big C&J 600 Honda machine. A beautiful looking little machine, and as you can see, very quick on the track as well. So it's Kenny Hope as he heads up the hill to start another racing lap. But as I mentioned before, these Evolution bikes certainly getting a workout here on the bumps of this Pound Mill racetrack. It's not the kind of track that would suit a vintage motorcycle because of the many bumps and potholes, but these Evolution bikes can certainly cope better with these kind of conditions. So it's still Kenny Hope, number 356, followed by number 10, Morton Hanna, who's in second position. We're just waiting. So it's still number 356, Kenny Hope, your race leader. Second should still be Morton Hanna, quite close behind. But this has been another excellent ride here by Kenny on the KX Kawasaki 250. Now these 1990 KX Kawasaki 250s, of course, it's still using the steel frame. These were the days before Kawasaki then moved on to aluminium frames for their motocross machines. But it's still number 356, Kenny Hope, just ahead of this man here. Number 10, Morton Hanna on the CR250 Honda Evolution machine. A future video here on Classic Dirt Bike TV. But it looks like things are hotting up at the front between Kenny Hope and Morton Hanna. Morton Hanna looks like he's ready to make that move to take that pole position. It looks like Morton Hanna has taken the inside, so Kenny Hope now down to second position, but I don't suppose Kenny will give up without a fight. So really, but it's still at number 10, Morton Hanna, with that slight advantage over this man here, number 356, Kenny Hope. But this has still been a good ride by Kenny, and I don't think Kenny's ready just to give up that first place position just yet, so this could be quite a nice scrap before the checkered flag between these two quite talented riders. So it's still a slight advantage to number 10, Morton Hanna, over number 356, Kenny Hope, in second position. Now these over 50s and 60s races, normally 12 minutes plus 1 lap, which is quite a substantial length for these older bikes and older riders on this quite bumpy track, but nonetheless these guys are making good use of their suspension on their bikes on this bumpy track. As we look at number 21, Mark Kenny on that lovely Honda 4-stroker. So it's still at Morton Hanna, number 10, with Kenny Hope in second position. And when Morton crosses the line this time, this will be the start of his last and final lap of this second race. But as it stands at the moment, Morton's looking quite comfortable for a race win. So as he crosses the line to begin his last and final lap, Kenny Hope is still sitting in that second position, who now has taken the lead. So Kenny must have taken a dive down the inside coming down the hill. So it's Kenny Hope, your race leader. Second is Morton Hanna. So as they start their last and final lap, let's see if Kenny can hold on to that prime position in this combined over 50s and over 60s class race. So as our race leader heads towards the checkered flag, it's going to be a win for number 356, Kenny Hope, on the KX250 Kawasaki in the over 50s class. And very close behind, it looks like, in second position and just about to cross the line, is number 10, Morton Hanna, on that CR250 Honda. But it's a win for Kenny Hope. Okay, I hope you enjoyed taking a quick look at Kenny there on his very quick KX250 in that over 50s and 60s age group race at Pow Mill in 2021. And it just goes to show just how competitive these older Evolution bikes still are, even in this modern day. Okay, so we still have some excellent vintage dirt bikes to feature here on my channel, and in my next video posting we'll be checking out Brendan Rowett's lovely Honda CR500 bike. Now this is a machine that's based on a 1984 Evolution Honda that's then been converted into a very nice twin shock race bike. So I hope you'll all join me once again very soon when we take a look at this lovely bike, when we all return to your number one and favourite Classic Dirt Bike TV channel.